grew up in Macedonia. I grew up in Dunbar Court, which is one of the streets to the side of Macedonia. And when I grew up in the mid-80s in this area, it was a beautiful area, full of life, full of vibrancy and community. But there is no gospel church here. There is no witness here. And way back in the beginning, in the 60s and 70s, Glenrothes Baptist Church had a vision to see a church planted in this community of Macedonia. But in the years that have gone since then, the community has descended into poverty. There is hopelessness here. In fact, the local council describe it as a festering boil in the area of Fife. But we have a vision. God has given us a vision to see the gospel bear fruit here as Jesus Christ is proclaimed. Let me read Paul's words in Macedonia to the Macedonians in Acts 16. In Acts 16 verse 9 he says, "A vision appeared to Paul in the night. A man of Macedonia was standing there, urging him and saying, 'Come over to Macedonia and help us.' And when Paul had seen the vision, immediately we sought to go into Macedonia, concluding that God had called us to preach the gospel to them." In this whole process over these last couple of years, God has indeed brought to us different people. But one particular family have come from the States with a vision and a desire and a passion to be involved in church planting here in Scotland. Mike, why don't you introduce your family and a little bit about what God has had you do these past 2 years here?
Okay. I'm Mike Montgomery. This is my wife Jeannie, our youngest Henry, Allie, our youngest daughter, Matty, and then we have Sadie, who's back in the States attending university. So for the past 2 years, starting in January 2018, so almost 2 years, I've been a pastoral ministry intern here at Glenrothes Baptist Church, serving in various areas, home visitation, prayer walks in Macedonia, especially from January 2019 on. We started those with a real purpose of seeing, gospel ministry start there in a church. Started Home Bible Fellowship, leading a Home Bible Fellowship in Macedonia just this month. Our first gathering, we had 19 different people, men, women, and children. Occasional preaching and teaching in the church. Also, my whole family is involved in the ministry. I take the children with me when I visit. Our 2 daughters sing, so as we interact with those we're visiting, sharing God's Word, trying to encourage them through God's Word, my children sing to them, which is a great encouragement as well. Henry also serves when we do kind of physical things, if someone needs something fixed or just those type of things, working in their gardens.
And Jeannie, why don't you share a little bit about how God has used you as Mike's wife, help me partner in ministry to serve here in Scotland too?
So my role has mostly just been to be the supportive wife, but I've also been able to work at mothers and toddlers, which is something that we don't have in the States. We don't see a lot of, so it was a new thing for me. So it was great, people, mothers specifically, but there's also fathers and grandparents and carers that will come and they bring the children, and the children are just playing, and you get to interact with people from the community. These are people that do not come to the church. And if over the time I've seen a few hop into the church, so that's very encouraging. But we get to build relationships with people in the community, and in that, the children get to serve and get to come and interact with the smaller kids, which they really enjoy. And that also helps build relationships, with these families. I've helped with leading a couple of Bible studies, different things with some of the women, and just in relationships and mentoring and discipleship and that sort of stuff.
As you can see, we have a family here who are gifted, are qualified and equipped, and more than that, are called to be here and labour among us, to bear fruit as the gospel is proclaimed in Macedonia. The challenge that we have is we were able to issue a Tier 5 visa 2 years ago as a church, and a Tier 5 visa doesn't require any specific funding for the post. The family were able to come self-funded, and that was fantastic. However, the rules have changed with the UK Home Office, and we're no longer able to roll over any more Tier 5 visas. The only way for this family to come here is to issue a Tier 2 visa, which requires specific levels of funding. And so in that, the church here are not able to support that post financially. And so we're looking for partners among the nations that the Lord would raise up with a desire and a heart to see the gospel bear fruit in places in Scotland where that gospel is not known and the hope of the gospel is not felt. And so we want to ask, would you consider partnering with us, Glenrothes Baptist Church, to call this family here to labour among us for 3 years under a Tier 2 visa? We would require around £50,000 worth of funding, which is around $70,000, but that covers a family for 3 years to be in post here. Imagine the impact that this family can have on an area like Macedonia over a span of 3 years. As the gospel bears fruit, disciples are made as God's Spirit moves through the proclamation of His word, and those disciples go on to make more disciples. We need you to partner with us to make this happen. If the Lord is stirring up in you a desire to partner, to support, to give, to pray, please contact us, and together let's see what God can do in Macedonia.